A road win? A Steelers win? Woo!
Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. The second episode in the history of me, Jake Liscow, hosting the Locked On Bengals podcast, in which the Cincinnati Bengals have a a winning record. I'm joined from Heinz Field by my guy on the scene, James Rapien, and the Bengals, looked like the far superior team in this game. Yes, the Steelers were injured, whatever. The Bengals had some injuries throughout the game as well. And look, Ben Roethlisberger looked just as washed as I thought he would when we talked about this game all week, James, and they got the turnovers we said they needed. I called out Logan Wilson by name when we talked about the keys to the game last week, and boy, did he come up clutch. 2 picks, game ball recipient Logan Wilson, as the Bengals really handle business in Heinz Field. 24-10. An easy victory on the road for the Bengals in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting easy because it's never easy in this series for the Bengals. And it's the first time they've had back-to-back wins over the Steelers since the end of the 2012, start of the 2013 season. So that's a long time, right? That's not even 2015 when it was the last time they won here at Heinz Field. But you're right. I mean, really from start to finish, there was never a doubt on who the better team was. The Bengals defense dominated early, forcing 3 punts and the first Logan Wilson interception on the Steelers' first 4 drives, not in that order. And then the offense, outside of Burrow's interception, which upon further review, if he had just led Boyd downfield, or instead of leading Boyd downfield and thrown it more to that to the left side of the field, to the left side. Then they're pretty flawless from an offensive standpoint. He was extremely efficient. They pushed the ball down the field. They had their deep shots, but they averaged 5 yards a carry. At least Joe Mixon averaged 5 a carry, and Burrow moved well in the pocket. So this was a complete team win. There was no one guy that carried them to it. And you're right. I mean, they were the better team when they were on the same field, on the road at Heinz Field in front of 58,000 Steeler fans. I would say at least 55 were Steeler fans. It's probably a little wrong because I did see some Bengal fans, talk to some that were listeners of the Locked On Bengals podcast, by the way. But yeah, I'm excited for those people because they get to drive home mostly all the way back to Cincinnati like I'm going to do in a few hours, and they get to celebrate a victory.
Yeah, the only doubt, you mentioned it was no real doubt the whole way. The only doubt was really the first drive was a little rocky, and then the interception. Joe Burrow missed Tyler Boyd on a corner to start the game where he was open. He was in a hole of his own, I believe, behind some coverage back there. He misses Boyd in the seam on the second drive, and like you said, James, it was just a missed throw. It wasn't like it was a terrible decision. If he leads him a little bit more, he's running right to left on a little seam, a little skinny post, and misses the throw a little bit, ends up tipped and intercepted. But outside of that, Joe Burrow played really well. And that's the most important takeaway probably from this game, unless it's how well the defense played, right? Because the defense was generally really good in this game, is Joe Burrow looking more like himself and looking more by himself, by the way, in a game where, and if he would have predicted this, I'm sure there's a crazy Vegas bet you could have made with crazy odds for this. The Bengals and Joe Burrow, who had been sacked 9 times through 2 games, broke the Pittsburgh Steelers streak of 75 consecutive games with the sack. And yes, they were missing TJ Watt. Yes, they're missing Alex Highsmith. Yes, they're missing Stephon Tuitt, but whatever. That's 75 games in a row. The Steelers had a sack. And if you were going to pick a team to break that streak, I mean, how sweet is it? Some sort of cosmic irony and justice here that the Bengals break that streak. And it wasn't the only streak to fall today, James. Chris Boswell never missed a field goal against the Bengals. 35 of 35 coming into this game, misses a field goal in this game. I mean, things were just going right all game for the Bengals. I think several angels got their wings as some balance was returned to the universe.
Yeah, it's something like that. I mean, if you would have told me that Burrow doesn't get sacked in this game, I probably would have laughed at you. because whether it's up the middle type pressure, you got Jackson Carman making his first start. And I think overall, and we'll do our rewatch and our film breakdown later this week and all that, I think he played okay, certainly. And okay, I would take okay before the game. And so, yeah, this unit played well. You're right. I think Burrow's mobility was a big part of that. And that wasn't the only record to fall. Jamar Chase setting a Bengals record with his third straight game with a touchdown. Obviously, he had 2 touchdowns. The first one, man, it was such a Minnesota-like type drive at the end of the first half where they're like, you're thinking 3, it's 7-7, and they just push the ball down the field. And the best part, this one versus the Minnesota one, it was the exact opposite from a crowd reaction as you would expect. Suddenly, everything was silent. And Jamar it was just like, what the hell just happened? The Steelers just tied it, and the Bengals like, no, we're pushing the ball down the field. And so Jamar is the first Bengals rookie rather, to have a touchdown in 3 straight games to start his career. He was tied with AJ Green with 2. Now he has 3 and 4. I repeat, 4 touchdowns in 3 games. My man, offensive rookie of the year, anyone? What are those BetOnline odds? I like that, man. He's playing well.
It's got to be coming, right? Also, and I don't know if you saw this, James, from NFL research, with 2 receiving touchdowns today, Jamar Chase became the youngest player and first 21-year-old in NFL history to have 4 or more receiving touchdowns in his team's first 3 games of the season. The previous youngest player with 3 touchdowns in his first 3 games was Randy Moss. So 4 touchdowns in 3 games beats out Randy Moss, who, as we all know, one of the, if not the greatest receiver of all time. So a pretty nice start for Jamar Chase's career, who apparently just told Joe Burrow, hey, just throw it up on that touchdown to finish the first half. And that's a fun little story. You can tell Joe Burrow, man, he loves playing with Jamar. He
does. Absolutely. He does. He was like, I threw it up and it was a touchdown. And that's what he does. That's why we drafted him. And that's the thing, man, is, there's going to be concerns about this offensive line, but teams are going to have to focus. I mean, think about this. The Bengals, you said that the Steelers didn't have TJ Watt. The Bengals didn't have T. Higgins. In this offense, going up against a still really good defense on the road in front of 58,000 screaming, cheering, black and gold wearing Steeler fans, they kept their composure. And there was never a time where they really got rattled, even after the interception, even after, any of that, the slow start, the sluggish start, or let's go to the second half here. And I know we'll get to offense and defense and stuff like that. But when the Steelers go on that 18-play drive, and then I think they gave up a field goal. They didn't give up a touchdown. Like, are you kidding me? Like, it would have been real easy to say, hey, man, we're up 24-7. Let's get the hell off the field here. And they did not do it. And that was just another example of just one of the many impressive things I saw today at Heinz Field.
The defense played a hell of a game altogether. I mean, Logan Wilson played great. Sam Hubbard played great. Trey Hendrickson, penalty aside, I think he played pretty well. The interior of the defensive line continues to be excellent. Logan Wilson, man, what a game. Let's talk about the drive-by-drive results. Let's look at that, because the Steelers were incredibly inefficient in this game. And so let's go drive-by-drive a little bit and talk about how this defense played in just a minute here coming up next.
Hey, Bengals fans, look, you're celebrating the win. I get it. I understand it. Well, you can win twice with Get Upside. It's the new app that's going to save you money anytime you fill up at the pump, which I'm going to be doing here in just a few minutes with Get Upside when I hightail it back to the Queen City and get some Geta. But, Get Upside, it's such a simple app. You download it in the App Store or Google Play, and you're going to get 25 cents per gallon and up to 50 cents cash back per gallon. Think about that. That's a ton of money you can save. There are people saving $200, $300 a month with Get Upside. It's a free app. So download it now, Google Play or the App Store, and make sure you use promo code TOUCHDOWN to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back. Again, use promo code TOUCHDOWN with the Get Upside app.
This episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast is also brought to you by BetOnline.ag. Back and better than ever with a redesigned website and interface with even more odds, props, and contests. BetOnline is the number one source for everything football. They've got you covered for the NFL and for college football, whether it's your UC Bearcats or Jamar Chase for Rookie of the Year, or the Cincinnati Bengals simply to upset the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road or hold it down on Thursday night. In just 4 days, BetOnline has you covered for all of those wagers. Right now, you can double your initial deposit when you go to the website. Use promo code NFL100 when you sign up for a 100% welcome bonus on your first deposit. From football to basketball to boxing, BetOnline has everything you need. Go check it out again at betonline.ag, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. All right, James, let's go drive by drive, shall we? And just talk about the way this defense played. First drive for the Steelers, and we'll focus on the defense here. First drive for the Steelers goes 3 plays for 4 yards, punt. Second drive for the Pittsburgh Steelers, 3 plays, goes backwards, negative 13 yards, punt. The third drive for the Pittsburgh Steelers goes 3 plays, negative 3 yards with an interception to finish it off. Still in the first half, 8 plays, 29 yards, punt. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers finally get something going here. They take 8.5 minutes off the clock on a 15-play drive, goes 86 yards. They scored the touchdown, but they took 8.5 minutes to do it. And what I'm thinking at this point in the game is the Steelers aren't going to score more than 14 points in the game. Their entire offense is throw the ball to Najee Harris in the flat, and hopefully if you do that 3 times in a row, you break enough tackles to get first downs. And then the last drive of the half, of course, goes 3 plays, punt. And the Bengals might have had a chance for an Evan McPherson field goal there at the end of the half if we weren't called back for a penalty on an Auden Tate 21-yard catch that got them out near midfield. But instead we go to halftime 14-7 after the Bengals score that Jamar Chase bomb. And this is the story of the game. For the Bengals defense is Ben can't get it downfield. You're getting pressure. They can't run the ball. And when they had a couple of running plays, it looks like they went for yards. Well, there were holding penalties that brought him back, right? And so the first half for this Bengals defense is just, all right, like maybe you'll eventually string some plays together. But I mean, we watched the Bengals offense try to do this last year. It is simply not sustainable to throw the ball 2 yards past the line of scrimmage every play and hope you're going to score points.
That's what it reminded me of. And Ben, I think, threw it 56, 57 times on the day. It reminded me of the Cleveland game week 2 last year, where Burrow threw it 61 times and he had barely cracked the 300-yard mark. He had like 316 yards. And it's like, damn, man, you threw it 61 times for 300 plus yards. You know, and it's not a knock on Burrow. It was just the offense. And you're right. They could not. There was no downfield threat, and they were missing Deontay Johnson. So that's part of it. Juju Smith-Schuster leaves with a rib injury. But the other part of it was Ben was bad. I mean, he was bad. I was so like, you're right. And you called him Grandpa Ben and Old Ben and, you know, whatever Ben. And I damn well know he is an Uncle Ben because that rice is better than, you know, anyways, I want to go on the Ben tangent. But yeah, I think that this defense, they played well. I also think part of it is Ben Roethlisberger is cooked, as you would say, and we saw it today. Because this is a game, if he had anything left, you bounce back, right? After losing to a Raiders team that a lot of people expected you to beat, and he didn't do it. And there was never really any signs of him doing it. Missed Chase Claypool open in the end zone at one point before that Boswell missed field goal. And that's when I was kind of like, oh, okay, this Ben, there's no even flashes of old Ben. This is just old Grandpa Ben, Jake's Ben.
There were 2. Like, he shook Logan Wilson on a scramble. He ends up picking up a first down, and it's like, oh, whatever.
I think that's on Logan. Logan should have just ran through Grandpa Ben.
Absolutely. Like, don't let 57-year-old Ben Roethlisberger juke you. But whatever, we can forgive it. Logan Wilson had a very good game.
Yeah, he balled.
And the other one was he evades a sack, rolling to his left, ends up throwing incomplete back over the middle of the field to Najee Harris on that play. And that's like a really extended play, by the way, that Akeem Davis-Gaither held up in coverage that whole time.
Yeah,
So props to Davis-Gaither
he played well, I thought,
for
too.
being there on that play. But yeah, to your point, Ben, average depth of target, 5.5 yards. 8th percentile average depth of target in this game. His CPOE is completion percentage over expected, 27th percentile, negative 5.4. His EPA per play, negative 28th percentile, was awful. And you could see it on like the deep ball to Claypool. Was it Claypool? No, the deep ball to Washington, when Washington absolutely cooked Eli Apple on the left side in press coverage. Ben had to throw it early. He had to throw it really high, and it had to, and he doesn't have it to put it on the guy anymore. So he had to loft it, right? And so that was another play where I'm like, man, yeah, that arm strength is killing Ben. Let's talk second half drives, James. First drive of the second half for the Steelers is another Logan Wilson interception that puts the Bengals up 24-7. And the game at this point, honestly, all but over. But judging from Bengals fans on Twitter, it's like, oh my God, this game is going to overtime. There's no way. And to those people's point, the Bengals offense was pretty bad from here on out in the game as well. But the next drive for the Steelers is a fairly successful drive, ends with a missed field goal, like I talked about, and Angel got its wings. The Bengals then go 3 and out, and then the Steelers, and this is where the game ended. The Steelers go 18 plays, 88 yards. Takes them 9 minutes, and they kicked a field goal because they got down to like the 3-yard line or something, I think, and then had a holding penalty.
Yep.
Or no, sorry, they had an
16.
offensive pass interference. They get first and goal from the 3, offensive pass interference, sack, false start. They're back to the Cincinnati 21. They get it to a 4th and 8, 4th and goal from the 8, and they kick a field goal. And that's just the end of the game. You can't take 9 minutes to kick a field goal when you're down, 17 points?
3 scores. Yeah, 3 scores.
And even still, there's concern from Bengals fans, and I get it. There's a lot of PTSD here. There's still fear that, like, oh, this game's going to overtime. But then, 12 plays, 73 yards, turnover on downs, 4 plays, 8 yards, turnover on downs. I mean, they had a 4th down conversion play where they check it down to Najee Harris in the flat.
Yeah.
What are they doing?
When they needed to score. Yeah, like it was, they checked that. I don't know. I don't know what the hell that was by Ben. I would never – that's like throwing the ball away on 4th down. It's almost that bad. It's not, but it is almost. Because, maybe Najee Harris makes 1 defender miss. He had to make 8 miss because the Bengals were all over him. And, Harris finished with – how many catches did he have? He had so many damn catches today. It was
like
11,
nuts. I think, on 17 targets, maybe.
He had 14 receptions for 102 yards on 19 targets. I hope you started Najee Harris in fantasy, especially in PPR leagues. Good God. And if you're the Bengals, you'll take that because outside of a couple, it was inefficient. It was, 2 yards here, 3 yards there. And they held him to 2.9 yards a carry on the ground. So you're right. That's where the game was decided, though. The fact that they used all that clock, all those plays, and they get 3, just demoralizing. And there was never a doubt. Like I get the PTSD, and there's been many a times, including the Monday night game last year, where I'm like, the Bengals are still going to lose this game. And I thought that there was at times during that game, I thought that. Today, I did not feel that. There was never really a time. Once Jamar Chase had that touchdown and it was 24-7, I was like, I kind of think this is it. Like, and I started to write some post-game stuff, and I always do that anyway, but you can write it with more absolutes. I can think about the title because I know that the Bengals are going to win, right? And I wasn't that in fear of it. So it's a credit to Zac Taylor and the Bengals. And by the way, I mentioned this stat a ton, so I got to give Zach some pub here. 115-1, Jake, on the road going into today's game. Okay, well now he's 215-1. That's not great, but you know what it is? Winning his first AFC North road game. Huge win. And Zac Taylor, I mean, he deserves credit because I think that the team was focused, and I think they played well today from start to finish.
There are some concerns I have down the stretch with this offense. We'll talk about the offense and kind of what happened at the end of this game that I would like to see improve, but a lot of good. Obviously, a lot of good to take away. I'm not here to rain on any parades, but there is one point that we should make about the way they finished this game. Real quick note, and we'll get into this a little bit more. Joe Burrow said that second Jamar Chase touchdown was his 5th read. He had all day to throw on that pass, and that was the case a few times. So credit to the offensive line. We'll get into it a little bit more here coming up next.
Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, maybe a Bengals victory over the Steelers, a device that lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you're also following Locked On Bengals on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. And then you got your neighbor's best friend's login for the good stuff. Well, if you listen to Locked On Bengals, you know you can get all that stuff in one place with DirecTV Stream. It is a simple process that instead of having to get a device for this or a login for that, you can bring everything together. Live TV, on-demand favorites, your favorite sports, movies, and shows in one spot. So check them out again at directtv.com. It's DirecTV Stream. It's a simple way to TV in 2021. So check them out again at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package.
Man, do I love winning. And you know what else I love was my post-game Built Bar today. Built Bar sent us the cookie dough chunk flavor, which has actual pieces of cookie dough in it. That was my treat to myself after the Bengals won the game. If that doesn't appeal to you, maybe you're not a cookie dough person. They've got 9 other permanent flavors on the roster: coconut, almond, cherry, raspberry, mint brownie, peanut butter brownie, double chocolate, and salted caramel. There is something for everyone. And everybody deserves a Built Bar when the Bengals beat the Steelers. Not only was it a treat for myself, but it was also a great shot of protein in my diet. It wasn't just a sugary candy bar with cookie dough in it. It was 17 grams of protein, just 130 calories in most of the flavors, and just 4 grams of sugar in protein bars that are literally covered in real chocolate. Go to BuiltBar.com right now. Use promo code LOCK15. You'll save 15% on your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. James, those cookie dough Built Bars are good, huh?
Oh, they're awesome. I had one yesterday. I haven't had one today yet. I was saving it for the drive home because I always like to eat during long road trips. So why not eat a Built
You got to
Bar?
have a snack. Got to have a snack when you're driving home from Pittsburgh, going through that tunnel, opening up a nice Built Bar. Let's talk offense, James. Joe Burrow.
I thought you were going to say open
game.
up a nice can of whoop ass. So I was.
James, we're not allowed to say that anymore, man.
Yeah, you can say ass.
Let's talk Bengals offense. Let's get back on track, James. Joe Mixon, you mentioned 5 yards per carry, and you know what was actually really impressive to me about the running game today is there were a couple plays, and they got one called back for a holding penalty, but there are a couple plays there in the third quarter where they go heavy on 2 straight plays, put Isaiah Prince on the field with an extra lineman, 2 tight ends, and they gained like big yards on 2 straight plays running behind the play side of that extra lineman and 2 tight ends. And things are going really well for you when you're able to run the ball and you're projecting, hey, look, I'm going to run the ball. I'm going to run the ball behind that extra tackle I put on the field and those 2 tight ends. And then you do it twice. And you run well twice on those plays. Yes, I know one was called back for holding, but I mean, that's one sign that things are going really well for you. And Joe Mixon wasn't necessarily a massive difference maker in this game, but he did rip off some really nice runs. He couldn't, in this Bengals offensive line, couldn't ice the game when the Bengals were going run, pass, punt for the last couple of drives of the game. And we'll get to that point in a little bit here. But generally speaking, you go run the ball for 5 yards to carry in Pittsburgh. You only have 44 total plays on offense. Things are going pretty okay for you.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. And I think, look, this team, they're going to have to win games like this where, I talked about the 30 points a game and, they haven't reached that mark yet, but where it's a couple big plays, it's a lot of mixing, and, they're picking and choosing their spots. There are times in this league where you have to do that, especially, and this is the part where it's this offense-defense balance almost. The fact that this defense is playing as well as it is, you don't have to necessarily go score 30 every week. And I think in the second half, and I know there's some concerns there, or at least a concern that you're going to mention. I think that it was like, all right, Zach looked, he was like, we're controlling the line of scrimmage. We're going to get after Ben. They can't beat us. They're not going to beat our defense regularly. Let's just not take the foot off the gas, but we don't need to be wild here. We don't need another 4th and 1 on the 30 type fiasco. And he kind of laughed at himself after the game because of that. And that's part of it, right? Learning how to win, and not just the team, but the head coach. And I think we might have seen that today. We'll see. It depends. But I think he did a good job of kind of balancing things and realizing what his defense was doing.
I think there's still some room to grow there. And so let's talk about the offense in this game besides Joe Mixon. I said one of the keys to the game is Joe Burrow had to play a really good game. And it was a rocky start, as I started to say before we got off the rails there a little bit. But he missed Tyler Boyd on that corner. He missed him a little bit in the middle of the field. But then he really settled in. And then he looked like the Burrow that we're used to him being. He was moving in the pocket, keeping his eyes downfield. The spin move to get out of a sack wasn't the only move in his arsenal, right? Like the subtle pocket movements were there. He called his own number out of empty on a QB draw and generally was remarkably efficient in this game. And it's evidenced by his EPA per play in the 84th percentile at 0.35 EPA per play. His average depth of target in this game, which has been something Bengals fans have complained about, was up to 9 yards downfield from, a pretty low number, 60th percentile, so slightly above average there, and was better than the math thought he should be. He had an expected completion percentage in this game based on where the targets were of about 66%. He completed 78% of his passes, so really good game for Joe Burrow, and that includes the QB draw, which went for a first down out of empty. So credit to Burrow. Starting to look more like himself is a massive development for this team, and doing it against the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that he really struggled against last year, getting a second shot against them, that's a big deal. And so that should not be understated just how well Joe Burrow played in this game.
For sure. I agree with you. And the fact that he had the interception early and was able to respond to that. And, he shows as well from a quarterback standpoint. Some quarterbacks have to throw it 30 times, right? Or 35 times. Or they're like, what the hell's going on? He was comfortable with what he was doing. And I think that's, you're right. The pocket movement, the maneuverability, the fact that he was running, he caught his own number a couple of times. And the one time early in the game, he got hit and it was right around midfield. And, it was a couple yards short of the first down. And I'm like, I hate those. Why does he keep getting hit? One time his helmet hit really hard on the grass. And I'm like, but that's going to happen when you move like Burrow does. And if it wasn't for his knee, I don't think I'd be like, he tried to get the first down there. And so it does seem like he's getting more comfortable, and that's going to continue. And now and we'll look ahead this week and talk about it, obviously, but the quick turnaround for these guys after what was a really physical game, and it was physical as hell. They're going to have to quickly rebound and mentally rebound, because the last thing you want is to not follow up this big Steelers win with not handling business against the Jacksonville team. Either way, Burrow played well, and I think he is developing. He's getting more and more comfortable in the pocket,
especially back at home. And also credit the offensive line for playing pretty well in this game. But let's talk about the one nitpick, I guess. Generally credit the offense. We'll go into more depth on where the offense was successful in this game tomorrow. But just from a reaction perspective, the Bengals' last 3 drives of the game before the kneel down drives were 3 plays, 6 yards, punt, and take 2 minutes off the clock. They go run right tackle 1 yard, run right end 1 yard, throw Joe Mixon in the flat 4 yards. Or maybe it was Joe Mixon. Yeah, I think it was Joe Mixon in the flat. And then they punt. And then they go back out there. And to their credit, the Bengals were looking to be a little bit more aggressive here. They come out and empty. It's 24-10. They come out and empty on first down. And Burrow tries to throw it into a really tight window to Jamar Chase on like a little slant route kind of deal. Gets popped up in the air, almost picked. Kind of a scary moment. Then the Bengals come back out and empty. And Tyler Boyd false starts. And at this point, it's like, okay, well, they went empty twice. They were going to try to throw it a couple times here, and then they go back to Joe Mixon. He runs for 5 yards on 3rd and 10, back and empty. Again, quick little slant kind of stop route, I think, for Jamar Chase. Goes for 7 yards. They punt. So 3 plays, 7 yards, a minute 44 off the clock, and a punt. The last drive, needing 1 first down to just finish the game with the ball in your hands. Don't give Pittsburgh any life. Not that there's much life at this point. It is Joe Mixon 2 yards, Joe Mixon 7 yards, an unfortunate timeout that I don't blame Taylor for, but an unfortunate timeout when the Steelers jump off sides, and you can't predict that. So you can't really get on Taylor for that, in my opinion, but unfortunate. Like, oh, you just won the game, but instead there's a timeout, and then Joe Mixon gets stuffed on the very next play, loses a yard, and they punt just a minute off the clock. So generally in this game, it works out. Like you said, James, the defense playing well, Pittsburgh having a hard time getting things going on offense. Not really anything in the way of explosive plays for most of the game for Pittsburgh on offense, because their offense consists of throwing it to Najee Harris 1 yard behind the line of scrimmage and letting Najee try to do things with the ball in his hands. But to his credit, he knew the game situation. When you're up 24-10 and there's like 6-7 minutes left in the game, you're pretty well assured of winning. You don't need to do anything crazy to make sure you win the game. And so knowing that, I kind of get it. But on the other hand, and I'm sure maybe if the game is going a different way and it is more of a shootout, if it's, 30-27 or something, they get a little bit more aggressive there. You don't want to see your last 3 drives of the game combined for 9 yards and 9 plays and no first downs. And I know there's a false start there that hurts them, but if there's one thing we want to talk about where there's still room for some improvement, it's finishing games, getting 1 more first down there, getting 1 more touchdown somewhere there in the second half. And we talked about it against Minnesota. Minnesota, better offense, got the game into overtime. Pittsburgh, not so much. The Bengals win in regulation. But that's the one area that I'm looking at in this game if I'm Zac Taylor in this offense, and I'm thinking, man, we got to figure out 1 drive in the second half.
Yeah, it's totally fair, because one more score and that's it. Or late in the game, 1 more first down. You're not punting it back and putting that defense back out there. And again, with the short week, that's the last thing you want is another 52-play drive by 52-year-old Big Ben that results in 2.5 points. So it's one of those things. Yeah, they have 2.5 pointers in Pittsburgh when you have a 27-play drive. That's it's just another thing that you're right, they have to improve on. And this could have been a game where I think they tried or could have tried to take another shot or 2 if they wanted to, and they're like, look, we have a big lead, let's just go with the and at the same time you don't want to do that, because you're 1 play away from being one. Like, what if Boswell makes that field goal, and then the Steelers, when they do have that 18-play drive, they don't settle for a field goal. They go for it. They score a touchdown. Now it's a 1-score game, and now we're really talking about it. And so that can snowball, especially against more explosive offenses, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and of course, if the game situation is different, I'm sure they call plays differently. I'm sure they go about it a little bit differently. But it's just one of those things where if you're confident in your offense there, you're definitely like, if this is Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, it's probably like 38-10, right? Because that's the way the Chiefs do things. It's a little bit different from the way they do things in Cincinnati, that they're going to continue to try to get the points and trust their quarterback to do that. And, maybe as the season goes on, we'll start to see a little bit more of that from the Bengals. But again, this is nitpicking. It's hard to complain too much. You understand why Taylor made the decisions that he made. When your defense is playing well, there's very little time left. There are 2 scoring drives that resulted in 10 points for the Steelers, took a combined 17 minutes. And there wasn't as much time left in the game by the time you're making those decisions to be a little bit more conservative for the Steelers to have 1 more scoring drive by those standards, because there's only like 7 minutes left in the game, and it took the Steelers a minimum of 7 minutes to score up until that point. Obviously, they got close. They got down to the 3-yard line in 3 minutes. So the potential was there, is all I'm saying. You take the result, absolutely. You take 2-1. First place in the AFC North, by the way, by virtue of holding the tiebreaker of divisional wins ahead of the also 2-1 Browns, 2-1 Ravens. But you take it. Opportunity to go in 3-1 is coming soon. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm going to go rewatch the game and revel in the fall of the Pittsburgh Steelers, the success of the Cincinnati Bengals. Now 2-1, baby. Hoo-day! And have a good one.